They called it the Harvest Protocol. That's what the alien fleets named their system of control, dropping from the sky like gods, marking planets, enslaving species, rewriting histories like they owned the stars. Earth was supposed to be next. Another primitive world to conquer. Another species to cage. They didn't expect us to fight. I was 27 when the sky cracked open over Nevada. It wasn't just one ship. It was hundreds. Sleek, black arcs of metal, humming with energy we didn't even have names for. No warning, no message. Just a sudden blackout across half the country, satellites ripped out of orbit like toys, and then came the sound. Low, vibrating, like it was inside your bones. My name's Dax. Back then I was just a steel worker. Third shift, single. No military training, no fancy degrees. But I knew one thing. When the power went out and people started screaming, something wasn't natural. And when those ships hovered over our cities, I didn't think first contact. I thought war. The first wave hit hard. They weren't trying to kill us, not yet. They were disabling, shutting down our power grids, locking out communication, paralyzing infrastructure. It was surgical, cold, efficient. Within 48 hours, the world went from connected to Stone Age. Governments tried to respond. They failed. Whatever tech the aliens used jammed our nukes, turned drones into dead weight, made missiles explode before launch. They called themselves the ULOTH. At least, that's what their machines translated. 7 feet tall, skin like wet concrete. No eyes, just ridges along their skulls that pulsed with color when they spoke. They didn't ask for surrender, they assumed it. That was their first mistake. You see, humans aren't made to be obedient. We're not perfect. Hell, most days we're barely civil. But we've got something none of these alien bastards understood. Spite. Pure, burning spite. You try to cage us? We'll rip the bars off with our teeth. You take our homes? We'll set the whole forest on fire just to make sure you don't sleep either. The resistance didn't start big. It started in scraps, like me and 2 others hiding out in an old scrapyard outside Reno. No communications, no backup. Just guns and whatever we could steal from their patrols. The first time we killed one of them, we didn't even know if it could die. Turns out they bleed blue. And when they scream, it's like metal twisting in a furnace. Word spread fast. Little fires of rebellion across the planet. Not organized, not clean. Just angry men and women saying, "Not today." The ULOTH underestimated how stubborn we are, how far we'd go to make sure no one owns us. Then came the others. The ULOTH weren't alone. The Threx, the Vonic, the Kill, dozens of species, some tall and beautiful, some twisted like nightmares, all part of this so-called Galactic Compact. Turns out they all took turns harvesting planets. One empire crashes you. The next one uplifts your survivors, chains you through debt, fake diplomacy, and synthetic peace. But Earth didn't follow the script. Because we weren't unified, not in the way they expected. No central voice, no global leader to bribe or threaten, just chaos, raw, wild, unpredictable. They couldn't manipulate us, couldn't predict us. And when we hit back, we hit harder than they ever expected. You know what scared them? It wasn't our weapons, it wasn't our tech, it was our rage. The kind of rage that builds when every city skyline turns to ash. When kids disappear into re-education camps. When families watch their homes get disintegrated because some alien species decided Earth's minerals were more important than human life. We stopped fighting for survival. We started fighting for revenge. By year 2, we'd reverse-engineered their weapons. By year 3, we started hijacking their ships. And by year 5, well, let's just say Earth stopped being the hunted. We became the storm. Now they kneel. Not because they want peace, but because they fear us. And if they think kneeling means forgiveness, they still don't understand us at all. There's something I remember clear as day. It was cold, middle of January, and we were holed up in what used to be an old mining town in Utah. No power, no food except dried meat and water we collected from melted snow. I was sitting by a broken window, rifle across my lap, watching the sky burn orange from some orbital strike a few hundred miles east. That's when I realized Earth wasn't Earth anymore. It was a battlefield, and we weren't civilians anymore. We were wolves with our backs against the wall. Funny how fast you adapt when extinction's breathing down your neck. We weren't an army, not yet. Back then, we were just scattered cells, broken pieces of a shattered world. But we had two things they didn't: desperation and memory. We remembered everything they destroyed, every street they leveled, every child they dragged off, and every time one of us survived a skirmish, we didn't run. We regrouped, learned, built better weapons, moved smarter. The Uloth called us feral. The Vonic called us unpredictable. The Kill called us contagious. And they were all right. See, when humans get pushed far enough, we stop fearing death. That's the secret. You kill our people, we cry. But then we bite. And when we bite, we don't let go. Our turning point came in the third year. The raid on Cape Town. By then, I wasn't just a rebel with a grudge. I was leading a group of over 200 fighters, all ex-civilians, a butcher, a librarian, a father who lost his whole family in the first strikes. We had 3 stolen Uloth rifles, 1 broken-down tank with duct tape on the gunner seat, and enough C4 to level a shopping mall. That's it. Cape Town had become one of the Uloth's largest supply depots. Ammo, tech, fuel cores, food, all stashed behind shimmering blue energy fields guarded by mech suits and reptilian mercs. It was suicide. Every strategist told us to stay away. I went anyway. We studied their shift changes, analyzed their power cores, intercepted low-frequency comms. It took us 6 weeks, and when the night came, we moved like ghosts. Not soldiers, ghosts. Silent, focused, brutal. You ever watch a reptilian merc get taken out with a homemade blade? It's not pretty. But war ain't a movie. It's a scream in the dark and blood on your boots. We took that depot in 5 hours. 5 hours. We lost 40 men. But we killed 300 of them. Captured weapon caches, fuel, medical stims, and for the first time, one of their damn warlords alive. Ugly bastard. Had skin like rusted steel and 4 sets of lungs. Took 6 tranquilizer darts to knock him out. We didn't kill him. We made him talk. That's how we learned the truth. Earth wasn't just a random conquest. It was a test. The Galactic Compact wanted to see if humanity could be broken without full eradication. A containment experiment, they called it. If Earth submitted, they'd use the same tactics on other fringe worlds. If Earth rebelled, they'd sterilize the planet and write us off as a failed species. We were a goddamn petri dish. When I told my fighters that, something changed. You could see it in their eyes. No more fear. No more waiting for salvation. We realized no help was coming. No alliance. No miracle. It was just us. Humans against the galaxy. And you know what? That's when we became dangerous. We weren't just fighting for survival anymore. We were fighting to make sure no other species would ever dare try this again. We turned Cape Town into a fortress, reinforced walls with scavenged metal from their ships, powered our systems using stolen fusion cells. We reverse-engineered their pulse rifles, rigged our tanks with adaptive armor, and most importantly, we started broadcasting. We hacked their networks. Every satellite they had orbiting Earth, every transmission hub. We sent out a single message to the galaxy. You wanted to chain Earth. Now watch us break your empire. That message went viral, not just on Earth, across dozens of systems. Turns out we weren't the only ones sick of being beneath the Compact's boot. Other species started rising, not all at once, but whispers, flickers of rebellion, small acts of defiance. The compact responded with fire. They sent the enforcers, genetically modified creatures designed for extermination, 12 feet tall, bone armor, built like tanks. The moment they dropped in, cities burned. But they made a mistake. They dropped in New Boston, and I was there. We lost 600 people that night. Children, elders, fighters. It didn't matter. They didn't discriminate. They just tore through the city like a plague. For the first time, I doubted myself. I'd seen death, seen men explode from plasma hits. But nothing prepared me for the way those enforcers moved. Mechanical precision. Zero mercy. I should have died that night. I remember standing in the center of an old subway station, bleeding from my shoulder, holding a grenade with no pin. One enforcer barreling toward me, claws out, red lights flashing across its face like a demon. Then I heard a scream. Not mine, a human scream. And then came the wall of flame. Turned out one of our scav teams had rigged the gas lines under the city. They blew the entire southern grid, collapsed buildings, took out 5 enforcers in one go. We lost the city, but we won the battle. That's when the resistance truly became an army. We stopped hiding, started recruiting, training, manufacturing. We gave up on treaties and negotiations. The time for diplomacy was dead and buried. Now it was about retribution. The United Front was born that winter, a global alliance of rebel factions under one command. No governments, no politicians, just soldiers, survivors, fighters. And I led it. Not because I wanted to. I was no politician, no hero. But people needed someone. And after New Boston, they looked to me, the man who survived an enforcer attack and kept fighting. I took the role, but I made it clear. We weren't here to rebuild the past. We were going to reshape the future. By year 5, Earth was no longer occupied. It was armed, defended, deadly. We turned Uloth warships into our own carriers, modified their AI to understand English, created hybrid weaponry that combined Terran grit with alien precision, and we started pushing outward, off-world. Mars was the first outpost we reclaimed, then Luna Base, then Europa. Small steps, painful steps, but steps forward. The compact panicked, because they'd never lost a planet before. And worse, they'd never lost to a species that still used bullets and duct tape. I still remember the first time we entered the Galactic Council's space. 10 warships, stolen, repainted with Earth's crest, a black fist over a burning star. We didn't ask permission. We didn't wait for an invitation. We arrived in their orbit with our weapons charged, and we sent one final message. You made us monsters, now face what you created. What followed was a war that scorched systems. The Vonic fell first, their homeworld reduced to ash. The Kill surrendered after we cracked their planetary shield and exposed them to their own weather storms. The Uloth. They held out the longest, but even their pride wasn't bulletproof. We didn't wipe them out. That's the difference between us and them. But we made them kneel. Literally, every member of the compact was dragged into the Hall of Judgment, what used to be the core chamber of the Galactic Council. We chained them there, forced them to watch the footage of what they'd done to Earth, and then we gave them a choice. Serve or burn. Most served. Some resisted. They burned. Now Earth isn't just free, it's feared. The galaxy knows our name, not as victims, not as primitives, as the ones who clawed their way from the dirt, ripped the stars from our oppressors, and dared to rule. I walk through what used to be the ruins of Johannesburg now, rebuilt, towering, alive again, and I remember the flames. I remember the screams, and I remember the promise I made to myself back when I was just a steelworker with a gun. No one chains Earth. And now? Now they all kneel. We were going to reshape the future. By year 5, Earth was no longer occupied. It was armed, defended, deadly. We turned Uloth warships into our own carriers, modified their AI to understand English, created hybrid weaponry that combined Terran grit with alien precision, and we started pushing outward, off-world. Mars was the first outpost we reclaimed. Then Luna Base, then Europa. Small steps, painful steps, but steps forward. The Compact panicked, because they'd never lost a planet before. And worse, they'd never lost to a species that still used bullets and duct tape. I still remember the first time we entered the Galactic Council's space. 10 warships, stolen, repainted with Earth's crest, a black fist over a burning star. We didn't ask permission. We didn't wait for an invitation. We arrived in their orbit with our weapons charged. And we sent one final message. You made us monsters. Now face what you created. What followed was a war that scorched systems. The Vonic fell first, their homeworld reduced to ash. The Kill surrendered after we cracked their planetary shield and exposed them to their own weather storms. The Uloth, they held out the longest. But even their pride wasn't bulletproof. We didn't wipe them out. That's the difference between us and them. But we made them kneel. Literally, every member of the Compact was dragged into the Hall of Judgment, what used to be the core chamber of the Galactic Council. We chained them there, forced them to watch the footage of what they'd done to Earth. And then we gave them a choice: serve or burn. Most served, some resisted. They burned. Now Earth isn't just free, it's feared. The galaxy knows our name. Not as victims, not as primitives, as the ones who clawed their way from the dirt, ripped the stars from our oppressors, and dared to rule. I walk through what used to be the ruins of Johannesburg now, rebuilt, towering, alive again. And I remember the flames. I remember the screams. And I remember the promise I made to myself, back when I was just a steelworker with a gun. No one chains Earth. And now? Now they all kneel. I started getting anonymous messages, warnings, reports of dissidents disappearing in the night, scientists going silent, alien governors being replaced by Terran-appointed advisors with military backgrounds. We'd become the thing we swore to destroy. It hit hardest when I visited Earth Prime, the capital arcology floating above what used to be South America. From orbit, it looked like a miracle. Clean, structured, flawless. But when I walked its halls, I saw steel walls and faces too afraid to speak without approval. A young recruit, barely 20, saluted me with eyes that didn't blink. "Sir," he said, "permission to speak freely." I nodded. "Go ahead, soldier." He looked around, leaned close, and whispered, "Is it true we're not letting aliens learn Earth languages anymore?" I stared at him. Then I made the mistake of checking. He was right. There was a new doctrine, a silent one. No official memo, no press release. But policy had changed. Alien students were being segregated in Terran academies. Cultural exchange programs were canceled. Books, music, and history from non-Earth species were being slowly pulled from the network. We weren't just protecting humanity, we were erasing everyone else. That night, I went to the tomb. Yeah, we built a tomb, a monument carved into the side of Olympus Mons on Mars. Inside were the names of every human who died during the occupation. Over 11 million names, each one laser-etched into obsidian walls that stretched half a mile. I sat in front of those walls for hours, didn't speak, didn't move, just stared, because somewhere along the way, we'd twisted the reason they died. They didn't die so we could rule. They died so we could be free. 2 days later, I did the unthinkable. I stepped down. Publicly. Broadcast across all networks. My face, my voice. No filters, no edits. I told the truth. We became monsters. and I won't lead monsters. It sparked a civil storm. Half the council tried to charge me with sedition. The other half begged me to stay. They said if I walked away, the wolves would tear the galaxy apart in my absence. They weren't wrong. But I was done being a symbol. Let the people see what came after me. Let them judge for themselves. I went off-grid, changed my name, traveled through the fringe systems, disguised my biosignal, masked my identity. I became a ghost in the galaxy I once conquered. And what I saw made me sick. Former compact species turned into servant classes. Terran colonies ruled by military governors who used orbital strikes to punish disobedience. Rebel voices crushed before they could even gather support. And worst of all, the people loved it. They loved the power, the superiority. "Humanity first," they chanted. Sounded real familiar, like something we once swore to destroy. But not all hope was lost. In the shadows, I found others like me. Veterans, scientists, pilots, even former enemies. People who remembered what Earth was before the flags and fire. They called themselves the Ember Pact, a quiet rebellion with one goal: to hold humanity accountable. And they wanted me to lead them. I refused at first, said I'd had enough, said I was done fighting. Then I saw a little girl, kill hybrid, eyes too big for her face, sitting in a cage on a mining station, labeled unregistered worker. She couldn't have been more than 6. That was the moment I realized you don't stop fighting just because the enemy wears your flag. So I said yes, the war isn't over, it just changed shape. Now we fight from the shadows. Now I'm the terrorist, the outlaw, the relic, the traitor to Earth's new order. But I don't care what they call me. Because every night I see those names on the wall. And I remember why we bled. We didn't rise to rule. We rose to be free. Our first major operation was Opal Widow, an infiltration into the Terran Central Command on Proxima Prime. Not the real headquarters, just a military data core, hidden beneath a commercial arcology. On paper, it looked like a tech firm. But the basement levels were packed with AI surveillance logs, encrypted orders, and, most important, detention records. We needed names, faces, proof. Because if we were going to wake people up, we needed more than bombs. We needed truth. I led that mission myself. We went in with 4. Me, Kellen, my engineer, Meyer, a former kill medic with nerve-steady hands, and Rafe, a quiet ex-sniper who didn't say much but never missed. We posed as janitorial contractors. No weapons, just a viral code hidden in a cleaning drone and enough forged credentials to pass 3 scans. Inside, everything stank of steel and perfection. Terran authority didn't just conquer, they sterilized. Even their damn hallways were silent, like the place had never known a single scream. We bypassed 4 checkpoints, 2 biometric gates, and 1 internal drone sweep before we hit the core room. That's when it went sideways. Not because of failure, because of betrayal. Rafe turned on us. 1 second, he's standing behind me. Next second, Kellen's chest explodes from a silenced slug to the heart. I dropped behind a column, blood in my mouth, pulse spiking. Meyer was screaming, more in rage than pain, diving over Kellen's body while Rafe pointed that silencer straight at me. "You're fighting a war that ended, Dax," he said coldly. "We won. You just can't let go." "Does this look like winning to you?" I shouted. "Children in cages? Executions in silence?" He sneered. "Peace has a price. You just didn't want to pay it." I didn't argue. I fired. The slug hit him in the knee. He dropped, howling. Meyer didn't hesitate. She jammed her blade straight into his neck. No hesitation. No guilt. We downloaded the data in 12 minutes. Kellen's body was still warm when we carried him out through a maintenance chute. Meyer didn't cry. I didn't either. We'd lost too many already. But something broke that night. Not just in us, in the movement. Because the data we pulled, it was worse than we thought. Over 70,000 detainees. Not criminals, not combatants, artists, journalists, students, scientists. Anyone who spoke up, anyone who questioned the authority, all of them relocated, most of them erased. Official term, silencing measures. And that's when I realized the Terran Authority wasn't just protecting Earth, they were cleansing it. We dumped the data leak through the old compact channels using encryption codes I'd buried during the war. Let the aliens broadcast it. Let them speak the truth we were no longer allowed to say. Within a week, riots sparked on 4 colonies. Protests erupted in the Terran core itself. Young people born after the war, finally seeing what their peace was built on. Of course, the authority cracked down hard. Martial law, mass arrests, blackout zones. But they couldn't kill the spark. And that's all we needed. I was in the outskirts of Titan when I got word that they knew who I was. Not a rumor, not a theory. They had my face, my voice, my last known coordinates. I didn't panic. I'd been expecting this. Sooner or later the wolves would sniff me out. But I wasn't planning to run. No, I was planning to strike back. We launched Operation Cinderfall 10 days later, our biggest hit yet. The Terran Orbital Tribunal, basically their judge, jury, and executioner in space. A floating garrison where high-risk threats to human order were tried, sentenced, and never seen again. We weren't going to hijack it. We were going to bring it down. 20 Ember operatives. 2 stolen Terran shuttles. Over 200 pounds of thermite and a fusion overload core rigged to detonate on contact with the central AI processor. I led the assault team. We breached through Docking Bay 3, took out the guards with EMP charges and close-range blades. Fast. Quiet. Brutal. We reached the core in under 10 minutes. But the moment I placed the charge, alarms blared. Someone had tipped them off. Not Rafe. He was dead. Someone else. Someone inside the pact. Meyer looked at me, eyes wide. "Run?" she asked. I shook my head. "Not this time." She nodded. We didn't run. We finished the job. We set the timer, sealed the blast doors, sent the rest of the team out through evac while we stayed behind to make sure nothing could be stopped remotely. 5 minutes left. That's when I found her. A child. No older than 7. Locked inside a holding chamber. No reason for her to be there. Just another hybrid born from the wrong bloodlines. Marked for cultural expungement. Same scared eyes as the girl I saw on the mining station months back. I grabbed her. Meyer screamed at me to leave her. Said we didn't have time. But I couldn't. Not again. We escaped with seconds to spare. The tribunal exploded behind us. Fire, light, thunder. A Goliath of law turned into dust and memory. That explosion was heard across 3 systems. And it became our banner. Now they don't just call us traitors. They call us legends. Boogeymen. Symbols of a truth that refuses to die. And me? I'm still hunted. Still bleeding. Still hiding. But I have something now I didn't before. Hope. Because for every soldier the authority throws at us, 10 more rise from the shadows. Because for every lie they feed, we show a sliver of the truth. Because for every child locked in a cage, we break the door open wider. The Ember Pact is no longer a whisper. We're a storm. And we're not just fighting to free the galaxy from the Compact. We're fighting to free Earth from itself. People think betrayal feels like a knife to the back. They're wrong. It feels more like a handshake you've trusted 1,000 times, and then realizing there's poison in the palm. Her name was Meyer. She fought beside me, bled beside me, saved my life more times than I can count. She was a medic, a warrior, a sister in arms. And I trusted her with more than my life. I trusted her with the cause, with the Ember Pact, with the mission. I should have seen it sooner. But when you've spent years watching friends die, You start clinging to the ones who stay, even if the cracks are staring you in the face. We were on Rigel 5, a frozen mining outpost converted into a hidden ember base. Deep beneath the ice, in an old geothermal shaft, we had bunkers, weapons caches, med stations, and an encrypted comms node that fed straight into 6 different resistance hubs across the systems. It was secure. Or so we thought. That's where the strike came. Not from above, not from orbit, from inside. They knew the layout. They bypassed our traps, our blind spots, our fallback tunnels. That kind of precision doesn't come from guessing. It comes from someone handing them the map. We lost 73 people that day. Good men. Fighters, engineers, kids barely old enough to hold a rifle. One minute they were joking over protein packs, next minute they were choking on smoke, crawling through fire, screaming for a way out that didn't exist. I only made it out because of Lena, a comms runner from the Luna cell. She dragged me through an exhaust shaft with my leg half torn up by shrapnel. We spent 6 hours buried under rubble until the fallback crew pulled us out. I couldn't walk. My lungs were cooked. My hearing was gone in one ear. But I didn't care about the pain. I cared about who sold us out. And my gut kept whispering the name I didn't want to believe. I confronted Meyer in the ruins of the forward bay 3 days later. She was helping triage survivors, wrapping bandages, covered in soot like the rest of us. Her face was calm. Too calm. "You left your post for 36 minutes before the breach," I said flatly. She didn't flinch. "I was rerouting med supplies." "No logs, no witnesses, no confirmation," I said. She wiped blood from her hands with a rag. "You think I sold us out?" I stared at her. "I think someone did. And you're the only one who knew both the fallback codes and the tunnel blueprints." There was a pause, a long one. Then she looked at me, not with fear, not with guilt, with pity. "Dax," she said, voice low, "you still think this war is clean, but it's not. And it never was." I raised my pistol, just in case. "Talk," I said. She didn't resist, didn't cry, just talked. She told me about a faction, the Pure Line Directive, a Terran splinter group that didn't want just control over the galaxy. They wanted to cleanse it, completely. Not just the aliens, not just the traitors, but anyone born of hybrid blood, anyone with compromised genetics, anyone who had strayed from the original Terran chain. They weren't official, not publicly, but they had deep roots in the Authority, in the Council, and even in the Ember Pact. "I didn't betray Earth," she said quietly. "I betrayed you, because you still believe we can share this galaxy, but they don't, and they're winning, Dax." My trigger finger twitched. "You murdered your own people," I growled. She looked down. "I tried to save the future." I fired, right through her kneecap. She dropped, screaming, clutching the wound. "I'm not going to kill you," I said. "I want you alive, because when I find the rest of your kind, I want them to see what happens to traitors." We got the data off her wrist chip. Encrypted correspondence, dead drops, even partial locations of Pure Line cells buried within Terran colonies. She'd been feeding them intel for months. I gave the order. Full lockdown. Every Ember base went dark. No transmissions, no movement. Total radio silence until we could weed out the rot. We lost contact with 3 cells anyway, probably dead. Probably worse. The worst part wasn't the betrayal, it was what came after. Because within days of Meyer's exposure, Terran news feeds began pumping out a new kind of narrative. The Ember Pact supports alien infiltration of Earth's core systems. Former rebel leader Dax now linked to off-world extremist cells. Hybrids rising, the silent threat among us. They twisted everything. Took our raids, our data leaks, our rescue ops, and recast them as acts of terrorism. Said we weren't heroes, said we were puppets of dying alien races trying to corrupt the purity of Earth. And the worst part? People believed it. Not everyone. Not the broken ones who remembered the occupation. Not the veterans who saw the truth in fire and blood. But the new generation? The ones raised on order, on stability, on lies wrapped in Terran flags? They bought it. Hook, line, and soul. I needed to hit back, not with violence, not this time, with truth. So I went after the one place still holding the original war records, the Ark Vault. Buried under Antarctica, sealed during the final days of the Compact War, it held every classified broadcast, every report, every holo feed that had been scrubbed or censored by the authority. They thought it was dead. They were wrong. I had the codes, and I had Lena. She cracked the old encryption like she was peeling paint. We spent 2 weeks freezing in tunnels while sentry drones swept the ice above us, waiting for one misstep to send them crashing down like wolves. But we made it in. Inside, the vault felt more like a tomb. Dust. Frost. Silence. Rows of servers pulsing with low hums and forgotten light. We pulled the footage. The massacres, the experiments, the trials, the executions, and most of all, the hybrids. Children, families, civilians, all marked for deletion, all wiped from the public record like they never existed. We didn't edit it, didn't dramatize it. We just uploaded the raw feeds, every screen, every corner of the Terran network. For once, the truth was louder than their lies. The aftermath was chaos. Riots on Jupiter's moons, student revolts on Terra Nova. Even some authority soldiers dropped their gear and walked into our territory with hands raised and faces hollowed by shame. We'd cracked the dam. But I knew it wasn't over. Because somewhere out there, the Pure Line Directive was watching, waiting. And they weren't going to sit back and let truth win. They were going to strike back hard. And next time, they weren't coming for the rebels. They were coming for everyone. I sat alone that night, looking out at the stars from a cliff on Mars' eastern ridge. The air was thin. The wind was colder than I remembered. Lena joined me, sitting down without a word. We didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she said, "You ever regret not ending it when you had the chance?" I didn't look at her. "You mean back when we won?" She nodded. I exhaled. "Yeah, every damn day." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Then let's make it worth the pain." The Pure Line wants a clean Earth. An Earth where bloodlines are pure, thoughts are controlled, and history is rewritten to serve power. But we're not giving it to them. We're giving them war. Again. Only this time, we're not asking for freedom. We're demanding justice. There's no warning when it happens. No sirens, no broadcast, no enemy fleet. Just silence. And then, the screams. The Pure Line struck Echelon 3 first, a colony moon orbiting Theta Centauri. Mixed population. Humans, hybrids, even some exiled compact civilians. It was quiet, peaceful, too small for strategic value. That's why they picked it. They didn't want a battle. They wanted a message. By the time we intercepted the emergency ping, it was already over. The last message from the colony was a grainy holovid, shaky hands, terrified breathing, children hiding beneath steel floor panels. Then came the flash. White, blinding, and then black. They used a weapon we hadn't seen before. No debris, no bodies, just glass. They vitrified the surface, turned an entire colony into polished, lifeless stone. No heat signature, no survivors, just the reflection of the stars in what used to be a thriving settlement. 15,000 people. Gone. I didn't speak for a full hour after the footage played. I didn't need to. Everyone in the command cell was thinking the same thing. The Pure Line wasn't trying to take control anymore. They were trying to cleanse. Lena sat next to me, eyes locked on the static now filling the screen. "How?" she whispered. How did they pull this off? It took us 3 days to figure it out. The intel came from an old asset, Trev, a rogue AI that survived the Compact War by masking as a subroutine inside a civilian waste system. Yeah, that's what survival looked like now. Trev gave us everything. The weapon was called Project Solace, a synthetic DNA-specific nanophage. Targeted, adaptive, liquid at launch, airborne on dispersal. Once it hit a population center, it only needed 5 minutes to do its job. And its job? To find impure DNA strands, hybrid traces, compact ancestry markers, deviations from baseline Terran genomic structure. Then it would activate, heat, light, flash melt. It didn't just kill, it erased. They weren't just purging people, they were erasing proof they'd ever existed. Solace was created in secret, years ago, by Terran biolabs under the authorities' black budget. During the war, it had been shelved. Too unstable, they said, morally indefensible. But the Pure Line didn't care about morality. They cared about legacy. They saw hybrids as infection. And now they had the cure. We tracked the source of the weapon to Virex Station, a floating R&D base hidden in the asteroid belt between Costa Minor and Helion's graveyard. Cloaked, armed, guarded by mercenaries who didn't ask questions and didn't hesitate to kill. We weren't going to sabotage it. We were going to take it. Alive, because inside that base were the scientists who built Solace, and we needed them, not just to stop it, to expose it. The drop was clean. Me, Lina, 2 heavy breachers, Rock and Elan, and a silent shade operative we called Whisper. No last name. No face anyone had ever seen twice. We inserted through a Debra channel, latching onto the station's underbelly like parasites. Whisper hacked the rotation sensors. Elan disarmed the pulse turrets. Rock blew open the vent shafts with microcharges. We were inside in less than 20 minutes. Then everything went to hell. We didn't know there was a second lab, buried in the sub-level, hidden even from the base's command. When we breached the primary lab, we found records, notes, archived audio logs of scientists discussing genetic modeling and kill ratio simulations. But the nanophage already moved. Gone. Whisper got us into the deeper core. And what we saw there, I still can't sleep. Dozens of pods, each one holding a child, small, pale, still breathing, but not normal. Their skin was translucent, their bones reinforced with synthetic lattices, their eyes pitch black, and behind every pod, a label. Pure Line prototype, Homo Solace, Gen Uchenju. They weren't just erasing hybrids, they were replacing them, creating their own version of humanity. One of the doctors was still alive. We dragged him out of a cryotube, barely conscious. Lina kept him from slipping into shock while I leaned in close, face inches from his. "What is this?" I growled. "What are you making?" He coughed, laughed even. "It's the future," he rasped. "No war, no deviation, no failure." I pressed my knife into his neck. "And these children?" "They're not children," he smiled. "They're ours." We took the footage, the DNA logs, the development files. We didn't destroy the base, we left it intact, because we knew they'd come looking for it once they realized what we found, and when they did, they'd find nothing. We wiped the servers, fried the navigation drives, cracked the station's spine and let it drift into the gravity well of a dead star. Let Solace burn in silence. We went underground after that. No broadcasts, no leaks. Not until we were ready. Not until we could guarantee the galaxy would listen and believe. Because exposing what they did at Virex wasn't just a hit against the Pure Line, it was a hit against every Terran Authority faction that looked the other way. A week later we got a signal. An anonymous burst from deep within Terran space, encrypted in an old Resistance cipher. 3 words. Next target, Requiem. At first we thought it was a trap. Then we saw the data package. coordinates, cargo manifests, transport logs. Requiem was a refugee planet, neutral, independent, no military value, but heavily populated with hybrids, over 100,000 of them. We knew what that meant. Solace was coming. I didn't sleep for the next 72 hours. I reviewed every landing vector, every approach path, every orbital defense position, every single escape route. We didn't have a fleet. We barely had 20 operational ships. But I wasn't going to let Requiem become another glass graveyard. So I made the call. We were going to intercept the delivery. Not destroy it. Steal it. Because the only way to end a lie that deep is to shove the truth down the world's throat so hard they choke on it. As I prepped my gear, Lena came to me. She didn't say anything for a while, just watched me load my weapon. Then, softly, "You think we'll live through this?" I looked at her, the only person left who'd never lied to me. "No," I said honestly, "but maybe someone else will." She nodded. That's all she needed. That's all any of us needed. The next morning we launched Operation Black Echo. And if we failed, it wasn't just Requiem that would die. It would be the last light of truth in the galaxy, and maybe the last breath of humanity's soul. Operation Black Echo was never going to be clean. We weren't storming a building. We were intercepting a classified transport vessel mid-jump, rerouting its course in deep space, boarding it blind, and extracting a weapon that had already wiped out entire populations. It wasn't a mission. It was a desperate gamble. We knew the risks. We just didn't know the price. We launched from a hidden orbital ring outside Costa Minor, silent running across the gravity lane of a shattered moon. The ship we were after was a diplomatic cruiser. White hull, Terran crest, registry marked as carrying medical resources to Requiem. That was the first lie. Every satellite we tapped showed otherwise. Heavy security drones, plasma turrets welded into the docking bay, and thermal signatures in the hull that matched Solace containment units. I had 9 fighters with me. Lena, Whisper, a demo specialist named Creed, who used to wire bombs for asteroid miners, and 6 others who'd bled in the dirt for this cause and signed up for one last firestorm. We approached in a stealth sled, drifting in the shadow of a decaying cargo freighter. The moment the cruiser's HFY ran a sensor sweep, we piggybacked our signal off the freighter's cold systems and mimicked a drift anomaly. A ghost in the data. Classic Ember tactic. They never saw us coming. We latched onto the hull at 0240 hours, cut through the exterior with silent fusion drills. No alarms, no resistance, until we hit Deck 3. Then all hell broke loose. First was the ambush, twin turret drones dropping from the ceiling, chewing through our flank. We lost 2 fighters before I even hit the ground. Then came the airlock collapse, pressurized doors slamming shut behind us, sealing escape routes. And just when we thought we could push forward, they flooded the corridor with biofoam, a hardening polymer designed to immobilize intruders by freezing them inside their armor. But we weren't rookies. Creed detonated a sonic pulse that shattered the foam's molecular bond, and Whisper slipped through the ceiling vent, flanking the control center from above. By the time we cleared the hallway, the ship's lights had turned red. They knew we were here. And they weren't running. We split up. Standard sweep. Lena and I moved toward the cargo hold. Whisper and Creed swept engineering to disable containment failsafes. The rest took defense positions. But even as we moved, something didn't feel right. Too many doors already open. Too many corridors. Empty. Lena caught it first. "These halls," she whispered. "No crew." I checked my scanner. 0 life signs beyond our own, which made no sense. A diplomatic cruiser, especially one carrying something like Solace, should have had a crew of at least 30. "Where the hell is everyone?" I muttered. Then we hit the cargo bay, and everything made sense. They were already dead. Not from gunfire, not from explosions, from solace. What we found wasn't a weapon on standby. It had already leaked. 20 bodies in sealed hazmat suits, slumped against walls and control panels, all Terran, no obvious wounds, just liquefied organs under the skin, like someone had boiled them alive from the inside. The phage had breached containment. And the only reason we weren't dead was because we were wearing hybrid-patched armor. Solace didn't recognize us as pure, and it only killed the pure. Then the worst part. At the center of the bay was a massive chamber. Glass, reinforced, humming with layered fields. Inside it, not canisters, not chemicals, but a child, a girl, maybe 9, floating inside a zero-grav womb, hooked to wires, sensors, biomonitors, skin pale, eyes black, just like the prototypes we saw at Virex Station. But this one was different. She was conscious, awake, and staring straight at me. Before I could react, Creed's voice came through the comms. Dax, engineering's a trap. I hit the link. Say again? Whisper's gone. She took out my transmitter and locked me out of the panel. She's not with us. Static burst, then silence. I swore. Whisper, our ghost. Silent Shade. Perfect infiltration record. And Pure Line all along. She didn't come to help us take Solace. She came to activate it. I turned to Lena. Get the data core, everything in that chamber, then prep for detonation. What about the girl? I'll handle her. Lena hesitated, eyes flicking to the child. She's just a kid. I looked through the glass. She was staring back like she knew me, like she'd always known. No, I said. She's a message. I walked into the chamber, alone. The seal hissed behind me, isolating the environment. The girl floated silently, cables pulsing along her spine. She didn't speak, but the monitors reacted to her gaze, one heartbeat spike when I stepped close, and then her voice filled the room, not spoken, transmitted, inside my head. Are you Dax? I froze. What are you? Her lips didn't move. I am Solace. Outside, alarms flared. Creed's voice roared in the comms. She's activating the dispersal system. I spun to the chamber interface. The girl, Solace, was overriding the controls without touching them. She was linked to the weapon. She was the weapon. I drew my pistol, pointed it straight at the glass. She didn't flinch. You think I want this? She asked, voice soft inside my head. I dream of fire every time I close my eyes. Lena's voice came through the comm. Dax, we're ready to blow. We can't shut it down. Creed cut in, panicked. You've got 60 seconds. Whisper's flooding the drive core. I stared at the girl. I should have pulled the trigger. I should have ended it. Instead, I stepped closer and reached for the cable in her neck. Let me end this, I whispered. She blinked once. Please. I ripped the cable out. She convulsed, screamed, no sound, just energy, and every light in the room exploded. Outside, I heard the ship groan, metal folding, structure cracking. Lena dragged me out of the chamber. Creed met us at the rendezvous chute, already bleeding from the side. We're out of time, he shouted. I didn't argue. We ran. 30 seconds later, the cruiser exploded behind us. No radiation, no phage, just silence. Because we didn't just stop a weapon, we set it free. The girl, Solace, was gone. But the data core survived. The footage, the DNA signatures, the lab files, and most important, the logs from the scientists. She's psychic. She's not just reacting, she's learning. The child is becoming the phage. We didn't make a cure. We made a god. We broadcast it all. Every log, every lie, every death. And we didn't whisper this time. We screamed across every screen in Terran space, every broadcast hub, every ship. They saw what their leaders built, and they saw who stopped it. I don't know what happens next. The Pure Line's not gone. The Terran Authority hasn't collapsed, but they're bleeding. And now, the galaxy knows. Now Earth's not feared because of what it conquered. It's feared because of what it almost became. And me? I'm not a general, not a leader, not a legend. I'm just a man trying to bury the monsters he helped unleash. 2 weeks after the Solace broadcast, the galaxy changed. Not from speeches, not from alliances, but from raw, unfiltered truth pouring across every system, every screen, every blood-stained flag still clinging to lies. People turned. Not just aliens, not just hybrids. Humans. Young. Old. Civilian. Soldier. Some walked off their posts. Some stormed their local authority towers. Others just dropped their heads in silence, knowing the mirror had finally cracked and shown them what they'd become. But power doesn't go quietly. Not when it's built on blood. And the Pure Line? They had one strike left in them. We intercepted the transmission 6 days later. Encrypted. Brutal. Pointed. A call to arms broadcast from deep Earth. Terran Command Prime. Buried beneath the crust of old Europe, once a myth, now the black heart of the Pure Line regime. They called it the Last Surge. Their version of Ragnarok. No more hiding. No more subtlety. One final operation designed to purify Earth and reset the human legacy. Every hybrid enclave, every resistance zone, every colony still flying the Ember Crest, gone, scorched clean. They were going to wipe the slate, and the only thing standing between them and that extinction-level act was me. I didn't want to go back to Earth. I'd sworn it off, sworn to fight from the edges, from the stars. But wars don't end on the fringe. They end at the core. And this time, I wasn't bringing a fleet. I was bringing the truth, and the rage of 1,000 dead rebels screaming for a reckoning. We dropped into Earth's upper atmosphere, cloaked, silent, running aboard the Crucible, a stolen Terran assault vessel re-engineered with hybrid tech, powered by plasma cells we took from a Uloth warship a lifetime ago. With me, Lena, Creed, 2 Ember demolitionists, and a handful of the last loyal veterans still alive. We weren't an army. We were a blade. And we were going straight into the spine. Terran Command Prime wasn't on any map. Hidden beneath the Alps, buried under centuries of stone, camouflaged by satellites programmed to erase its presence in every scan. But we had Solace's data core. And it gave us the entry point. An emergency vertical shaft sealed after the last compact counterattack, forgotten by everyone except the bastards who built this place. It took us 3 hours to drill through, 3 more to descend. By the time our boots hit steel, the air was so thick with tension it might as well have been smoke. Lena leaned into me. You ready for this? I looked at her. Pale eyes, burned scar along her jaw, still standing after everything. No, I said. But I don't need to be. We made it 5 levels before the alarms hit. No stealth left. Pure Line shock troopers stormed the halls. Black armor, faceless visors, rifles that turned bone to dust. We didn't run. We fought. Creed laid traps behind every bulkhead. The twins dropped a plasma mine in an elevator shaft that vaporized 20 troopers in one boom. I took a shot in the ribs, felt my armor crack, kept moving anyway. We weren't here to survive. We were here to finish. We breached Command Prime's main core at 0400. And there he was. Director Vale, the architect of the Pure Line, the mind behind Solace, the man who'd once served under my command during the Compact War and betrayed every oath we swore. He stood alone. No guards, just silence. His voice was calm. Too calm. You could have ruled beside me, Dax. I limped forward, gun aimed at his chest. You built a death machine out of a child and burned cities to hide it. He tilted his head. And yet here you are, proving that we're the same. Lena snarled. We're nothing like you." He ignored her, eyes locked on me. "We gave humanity unity," he said. "Direction, purpose, and you fractured it with guilt." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "No," I said. "You gave humanity a coffin and called it peace. I just kicked the lid off." He stepped aside. Behind him, the surge console. Dozens of red lights blinking across planetary overlays, hybrid zones, ember caches, off-world colonies. One button, one choice. "They're all queued, Dax," he whispered. "You kill me, and it all launches." Creed cursed under his breath. Lena looked at me, desperate. Is he bluffing? I didn't answer, because I knew the pure line. They never bluffed. I stepped forward, gun still raised. Vale watched me. "Be a soldier," he said. "Not a coward. Do what's necessary." I lowered the gun. He smiled. Then I reached for the console and ripped out the neural core with my bare hand. Sparks, screams, alarms blaring. The entire system began collapsing in on itself. "I'm not your executioner," I said, "but I'm damn sure you're reckoning." Vale lunged, too slow. Lena fired. One clean shot, right between his eyes. We didn't escape clean. The whole base was rigged to implode. We sprinted through burning corridors, down collapsing platforms, under rupturing ceilings. We made it to the shaft with 20 seconds to spare. Creed was bleeding. The twins were dragging a third fighter who'd lost his leg in a blast. Lena pulled me into the evac sled just as the entire mountain swallowed itself in a quake. From orbit, the Alps looked like a crater. But we were alive. And the Pure Line? Dead. It didn't end the war. Too much blood for that. But it changed the tide. The Authority fractured. Military leaders fled. Colonies declared independence. The Ember Pact wasn't just a rebellion anymore. It was a nation, built not on fear, not on supremacy, but on survival, and the memory of every name the Compact and the Authority tried to erase. I returned to Earth one last time, not as a soldier, not as a symbol, but as a man. I walked the ruins of Geneva, saw kids playing in rubble, saw old flags burned and buried. One boy asked my name. I told him. He stared. "You're real?" I nodded. He grinned. "My mom says you're why we get to go outside again." I didn't answer, just put a hand on his head and walked away. There's no glory in this, no throne, no medals, just scars. And the silence of knowing that you did what you had to, even when it cost everything. But now, they kneel before Earth, not because they're afraid, but because they remember what happened when they tried to chain it, and they know we will never kneel again. Not to them, not to anyone.